Dream Drop Distance is at a tie for my second favorite Kingdom Hearts game, its tie being the original Kingdom Hearts. I felt like 3D did a lot of good things gameplay-wise, and I honestly love the story. It is the Kingdom Hearts game that made me feel so many emotions, mainly fear and disbelief. But it's often come into ridicule for the time travel thing, which I do admit I hated, but only because there were enough plot holes in Kingdom Hearts where time travel just barely fit. But it did also make the story more confusing. But it's also come into ridicule for Sora's behavior. Unfortunately, many Kingdom Hearts fans wrote off Sora as being completely stupid in this game, but I personally never saw that. Let's get the main issue out of the way. Literally none of the protagonists knew that Xehanort was gathering his 12 other selves at the same time as the Mark of Mastery exam, nor could they have even guessed that Xehanort wanted Yensid to give Sora and Riku the Mark of Mastery exam that would require them to travel back in time to when their world was destroyed to cross over into the realm of sleep. No one knew that their efforts to be prepared for Master Xehanort's return would be all according to his plan. So, obviously, Sora did not know the whole test was a trap for him to become the 13th member of the true Organization 13. He just thought it was going to be a simple mission. Unlock the keyholes of 7 sleeping worlds and return with the fancy title of Keyblade Master. No Heartless, no Maleficent, no Organization 13, no man behind the curtain pulling the strings. Nothing that would cause Sora to believe he had to put in more effort than he felt he needed, or for him to get serious. Sora wasn't dumb or oblivious, he was relaxed. After all, he already stated he felt like the test was a formality, that he had already proved himself. He didn't feel like he had to take the test, so he didn't need to get worked up when something was a little weird. But do you know who did want to take the test? Who really felt like he needed to be tested whether he was worthy to wield the Keyblade? Riku. Riku still felt like the darkness controlled him. He wanted to see if he was still the boy who wanted the strength to protect his friends. The goal of the exam was different for Riku, which could make the exam more dangerous for him. There was more at stake, and Riku wasn't even sure he would pass, but he was willing to try. Sora, on the other hand, is and always has been confident in Riku's skills. He was hoping that Riku would agree that they had proved themselves as Keyblade Masters, but seeing how much the opportunity to prove himself meant to Riku, and the possible dangers his choice could bring him, Sora decided to join Riku in the Mark of Mastery exam. He wanted to be with Riku through the test to let Riku know he wasn't alone, and to make sure that this time he could save his best friend if he fell to darkness. When Sora realized that he and Riku had been separated, I feel like he went on autopilot. He had a task to complete, but he also needed to find Riku, and if he could help others along the way, then he would. Which, when you think about it, it's kind of sad that Sora is used to this. Anyways, enter Neku. Literally Sora's polar opposite. A bit of background on Neku for those who haven't played The World Ends With You. Neku is not a people person. He feels like he doesn't need other people, especially friends, who could possibly turn on him. He isn't cooperative with anything or anyone unless he absolutely has to be. When he's brought into the Reaper's game, it takes him a while to realize he has to cooperate with his partner in order to survive. And with that set in, he was willing to be on a team even if he didn't get along with his partner. Because Kingdom Hearts versions of Final Fantasy characters are alternate realities of their game counterparts, and because Neku knows Joshua while still being Shiki's partner, we can assume this for the World Ends With You characters. This Neku knows he needs his game partner, but is still not the friendliest of sorts. When Sora is made aware of Neku's situation, he's happy to help Neku survive the game, but Neku dismisses Sora's help. He needs his partner, not Sora. So Sora offers to help Neku find Shiki as a friend would, but Neku dismisses that as well. After all, he was going to offer Sora to young Xehanort to get him and Shiki back home. He didn't need to become friends with Sora. But what Sora knew that Neku didn't was that Neku was in need of a friend, someone who would be there for him no matter what he did. He also knew that deep down Neku was a good person, which is why Sora dismissed the idea of Neku and young Xehanort being on the same side even after knowing the two of them had made a deal. Neku stood up for him too. When young Master Xehanort backed out on their deal, Neku stepped in and prevented Sora from getting hurt. It was the only proof that Sora needed. Neku explained what happened to Sora and apologized, not expecting to be forgiven. But Sora forgave Neku because that's what he needed, because that's what friends do. And slowly Neku begins to open up. He accepts Sora's help during the second visit to Traverse Town, announces that Joshua is his friend to Sora, and confirms that as a fact later to Joshua with some very Sora-ish words. although if you play The World Ends With You, it's kind of, more like Neku towards endgame. After all, Joshua needed a friend too. Sora saw it, but Neku this time was the one to be there for him. Speaking of Joshua, no one ever seems to talk about how Sora was suspicious of Joshua when they first met. A guy pops out of nowhere and knows Sora's name, similar to how Neku and Sora met, but Sora isn't as friendly towards him as he was with Neku. Neku claims Joshua is his friend, but Sora still interrogates him, indicating that he didn't entirely trust Joshua. While Joshua is still a mystery to Sora, after hearing his attempts to save the World Ends With You cast, he trusts Joshua as an ally and friend. So obviously Sora does not trust every total stranger he meets. The most obvious example in this game would be young Xehanort, whom he never trusted at all, and another example is Frollo and Phoebus. Frollo was hostile towards Sora from their first meeting, and hearing about his treatment of Quasimodo, Sora obviously wasn't going to trust him. Knowing that Phoebus took orders from Frollo from their first meeting, Sora wasn't willing to trust him either. But when Phoebus explained his predicament and what actions he was taking to stop Frollo, Sora, like he did with Joshua, trusted Phoebus as an ally and friend. Sora isn't overly trusting or oblivious. All he needs is a good reason to trust or distrust. It's how Sora's always been, and it's the nature of his heart that Ansem the Wise says makes it uncorrupted. A heart that's willing to see the good before the bad. A heart that will not judge someone else through dark lenses. A heart that will always give someone a chance if they want it. Sora will also give someone a chance if he feels like that person needs it. And here I bring up, in my opinion, one of the saddest examples. Tron, or Rinzler. When Sora learned that Tron had been reprogrammed into Rinzler by Clue, he was determined to get Tron back. But when Rinzler attacked him and Korra after Sora tried to reason with him, Korra implied that Rinzler would probably not listen to what Sora had to say. Sora's reply, "He just needs time, that's all," speaks from his experience with Riku in Kingdom Hearts 1. He's already had to deal with a close friend influenced by someone who turned against him, and Sora wanted to give Tron his chance to regain himself like Riku did. He didn't want to fight another friend. It was what he was trying to avoid until he absolutely had to. But here was the issue that Sora never realized, and I don't fault him for this because it isn't the most obvious. This Tron in the grid wasn't the Tron he met in Hollow Bastion. Space Paranoids is a modified copy of the original program, which would become the grid. The world containing the grid fell to darkness and eventually into the realm of sleep. Therefore, the events of Space Paranoids did not happen in the grid, and Space Paranoids Tron is not the same as the Grid Tron. The Grid Tron never met Sora before his visit, and could not be reasoned with by remembering a friendship he never had. But if that's the case, why did Tron save Sora from Clue's attack and reach for his hand, you may ask? Well, Tron was a hero who helped programs and users alike, so he could have just saved Sora like a hero would. He could have went on autopilot hero when Sora freed him from Clue's control, but I have my own theory. Before Clue attacks, we see Sora as he was in Space Paranoids before he seemed to reset Tron's code with the Keyblade. I don't know if this was intentional, but I think Sora channeled his memories from Space Paranoids into the Keyblade, which he used to reset Tron, and wrote his memories into Tron's code. There's honestly no proof of this, but the way Tron saved Sora and reached out for him felt personal, like he was reaching out for a close friend. It's a feeling I don't think I would have felt if Tron had just been reset to Gridtron. And while Sora couldn't save Tron, he managed to look on the bright side. Tron was still there inside his heart, where he waits to be freed from Clue completely. However, this experience put Sora into the path of young Xehanort yet again, along with Xemnas. All of Sora's encounters with the organization members in this game are all planned to guide Sora towards the path they set for him at the beginning of the exam. Every encounter plants seeds of doubt in Sora's mind. Is his heart a prison? Do his memories really belong to him? Is he really like a nobody, as Xemnas claims? Eventually Sora asks why young Xehanort is following him around, who he was and what his goal was, only to be met with another cryptic answer: sleep on. All the answers could be found if Sora kept dreaming, if he continued to dive further into sleep. And fortunately for Xehanort, that's exactly what Sora did, leading him to the world that never was. Waiting for him was everybody's favorite one-eyed sharpshooter, Xigbar. Ziggy explains to Sora that his path on the Mark of Mastery exam has been intercepted and guided by members of the true Organization 13, and that there was no going back home. Sora takes this news remarkably well, and seems to accept that he can't go home. If it's just him and the organization inside a dream, then nothing is getting in Sora's way of taking them out like he did before. Before he could do anything, young Xehanort appears again, leading Sora further into dreams. The first 2 dreams show off how much control the organization had over the situation. They had planned very far back in time and knew what places in time to exploit. The third dream was to let Sora fall further into sleep by chasing the visions in his dreams. Either he followed Donald and Goofy, or Mickey and Pluto. However, before he could do anything, Riku had found him and tried to wake him up. This caused Sora to enter a state between wake and sleep, his environment a twisted version of the world that never was, and his dreams formed from the memories sleeping way down in his heart. Here, the first person he runs into is Naminé, the girl he fought so hard for and had changed so much for, the friend he had to forget and the thanks he never gave. When she ran, Sora chased her, hoping to finally fulfill his promise, only to have her turn into someone else. Xion. While Sora didn't know who she was, Roxas did, crying through Sora like he did leaving Twilight Town. And then Xion ran off and disappeared, leaving Sora yet again with more questions. This interaction with Xion and Naminé is Sora's first confrontation with the hurt in his heart. Naminé's pain of being Kairi's shadow, chosen to be forgotten by Sora. Xion's pain of being Kairi's reflection while being Roxas's replica, having no choice to be forgotten for Sora's sake. Roxas's pain of losing Xion, and Sora's pain of being forced to forget a friend he never actually had. It's unknown if Mickey warned Sora of this hurt beforehand, but given the urgency of Xehanort's return that prompted a hasty Mark of Mastery exam, I'm going to guess that he didn't have the time. Even with this scene and the brief conversation Sora and Riku had about Naminé in Kingdom Hearts 2, some are still confused about whether Sora actually remembers Naminé. And I think this scene shows that he does because, again, it feels so personal. Sora stopped dead in his tracks when he saw her, and wanted to make sure it was actually her. It's like he couldn't process all the thoughts and emotions seeing her in front of him. And when she ran off, the way Sora called out and ran to her felt like he remembered her. I love this scene because it made me feel Sora's desperation to fulfill his promise to Naminé, and for it not to actually be her must have hurt him. With his heart aching but no answers to be found, Sora continues on, hoping to find Xion. But what he never expected was to run into Roxas. Roxas insists that because Sora is connected to so many hearts, he can face the hurt and end the pain of those it belongs to. This includes his own, because he understands that he and Sora are the same person, which those are his words, not mine. But Sora believes that he and Roxas are 2 different people, that Roxas deserves to be his own person. This stuns Roxas since all he was ever told was that he wasn't a real person, that he was just a nobody and didn't have a heart, that couldn't feel anything, much less be his own person. And here was Sora, the person he gave up his existence for, telling him that everything he was told was wrong, who believes that he should exist. It's an extremely important message not only to Roxas, but to Sora, who wanted to give the message probably since he found out about Roxas. It's an incredible kindness to Roxas, which is why he knows Sora has to be the one to inherit his and the other's pain. Because of their unique situation of nobody and somebody once coexisting, Roxas could have been the one to absorb Sora and eventually be in the position that Sora is in now. But Roxas knows that he could have never been as kind as Sora, so willing to accept the pain of others despite what pain he had already had. Sora had to be the one, so Roxas passed along his memories and pain to Sora. This amount of pain was more than that of Xion's and Naminé's, and it left Sora wondering what he was supposed to do. If he kept going, was he just going to meet someone who'd disappear, leaving him with nothing but pain? And what was he supposed to do with this pain? How is it going to help anyone? Maybe he could just walk away in hopes of avoiding the pain. But like his Data counterpart, Sora decides to continue on despite the pain, hoping to find a way to mend it. But this is exactly what Xehanort planned on. Sora continuing despite the aching in his heart, so he could be lured into deep sleep. And in the deepest pit of sleep, Sora finally got his answers. First, as he had been suspecting from Prankster's Paradise, nobodies can have hearts. Roxas's memories proved that, and Xemnas confirmed it, stating that the heart and body can only be temporarily separated. The second is that the nobody members of Organization 13 were told that they didn't have hearts, so they could complete Kingdom Hearts to turn all of the members into Xehanort's vessels. The third, most of their candidates were not fit to hold Xehanort's heart, but it was an expected outcome. And the fourth was that Xehanort's selves throughout time were gathered to fill the ranks of the real Organization 13, with Sora being their 13th vessel. Most of us were astounded by these answers and how ridiculous they seemed. But Sora wasn't astounded by Xehanort's final plan. He was astounded by all the people that were affected in the process. Sora was angry that Xemnas had told all the nobodies that they didn't have hearts. He couldn't fathom that he and Xigbar had tricked their fellow members, and he was fed up with how they had treated all the people that were involved in this plan. What they did to Naminé in Castle Oblivion, how they created replicas whose lives were filled with misery, how they kept Roxas in the dark about his identity, the destruction of worlds and the tearing apart of friendships. Despite of all that, Sora was still stunned because he truly never thought that Xehanort and the organization could do anything worse. They performed horrible experiments that resulted in the creation of Emblem Heartless, costing the hearts of who knows how many, including themselves. They created an organization with a false goal and gave all of its members false hope that they could be complete again. And they expected that most of their members would fail and fade away into nothingness. And yet they continued, causing more and more pain as they tried to make 13 darknesses. They viewed people as nothing more than subjects to be experimented on, and that's what Sora could no longer take. Fed up with it all, Sora begins to lecture Xemnas, explaining to him what hearts are in the best way he can. Simply. Sora is simple, and his speech about hearts both in Kingdom Hearts 1 and 3D show that even though his reasonings and actions are simple, Sora has a profound understanding of hearts and how they work. Xehanort has spent his entire life and subsequent incarnations learning about the heart, but never got anywhere. Despite all his plans, a boy who wasn't even chosen to wield the Keyblade stopped two of his major plans that took years to come to fruition. And Sora didn't have to do anything special, he just followed his heart. And that made him so unpredictable that Xehanort couldn't plan for him until now, and even then Sora still surprises him in Xigbar. When Sora stated that his friends made him stronger, Xigbar realized that it was his connection to other Keyblade wielders that gave him strength, and the ability to continue using the Keyblade. To him, that made sense that he's always seen Sora as less capable than other Keyblade wielders, a wimp. Sora turns to Xigbar to prove that he isn't one when Xigbar tells Sora he has another option. He could accept his current situation and join Organization 13 willingly, letting go of his current power for something Xigbar describes as bigger and better. Sora can make himself more powerful, put himself in a larger role. And here's the thing, Sora hesitates before declining the offer. Sora considered how much he'd been through because of the Keyblade. He was given a responsibility he wasn't prepared for, nor did he ask for. It prolonged the search for his friends and his journey home. It caused a rift between him and Riku, and it even abandoned him when Riku realized it was his. The weapon caused him nothing but trouble, and he wasn't even chosen by it at first. And he could let go all of the responsibility it forced upon him. Honestly, I feel like he would have been justified. And since he hesitated, it means that Sora did consider taking the offer. Maybe. But that isn't Sora. He wouldn't throw away everything he's fought for just because he suffered when he didn't have to. He accepts that the Keyblade didn't choose him, and is content with his simple role of being part of the picture, not the focus of it. He doesn't care about power. He doesn't need it. He already has what he needs for power and support. His friends. With them, he stands up to Xigbar and defeats Xemnas once again. Unfortunately, Sora doesn't win the battle. As Data, Naminé, and Roxas warned, the pain stemmed from the memories in Sora's heart has the potential to damage or break his heart and drag him into darkness. While Sora was aware that he was deeply connected to some people, it appears he was not made aware of this warning. Sora dove further and further into dreams to get answers, accepting the pain in his heart along the way. But he physically exhausted himself in a place where the darkness loomed close, which added to the strain already put on his heart by the memories. And so the darkness began to consume him from the inside out, allowing Xehanort to move in and take Sora as his 13th vessel.